Glad to have you join us again. Now let's get talking. Nigeria's annual inflation rate rose for the fifth straight month to 22.41% in May 2023 from 22.22% it recorded in the previous months. That's according to the latest Consumer Price Index report recently released by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS. Now, inflation rates in Nigeria has continued to rage at an over 70-year high despite contractionary monetary policies by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The NBS attributes the May inflation figures on the back of the surge in energy and food prices, coupled with the cash crunch experienced in the fourth quarter of the year as a result of the new Naira redesign policy by the Central Bank. The rate has remained high despite measures by the monetary authorities to clamp down on inflation by increasing interest rates to as high as 18.5% in May 2023. Meanwhile, inflation is expected to continue its upward trend throughout the year, following the announcement of the removal of fuel subsidies and the adjustment of the FS rate at the official market. To break down these figures as we make more sense of all of these and do some analysis of the fundamentals behind the surge in inflation rate is an investment analyst, Samson Owolabi, who joins me live virtually to analyze this figure. Samson, good morning. Many thanks for being a part of the show today.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Samson, let me start this conversation by asking you the figure for May inflation 2023 reports, I beg your pardon, does it come as a surprise to you or it was expected?
Well, it didn't come as a surprise for me. It was as expected, because when you look at this, you will understand the fact that the major factors that have been driving inflation upwards are still predominant, and major developments in the markets, the recent developments in the market right there, also just lets us to understand the fact that we might see inflation trend higher in the coming months. So this is something that is not coming as an let's say as a surprise. It's as expected, and we should expect more in the forthcoming months.
So you just made mention of some of the fundamentals. Now I'm really concerned, because Nigerians are really concerned. Inflation is already eroding the purchasing power of the average Nigerian out there. Now, can you give us highlights of some of these fundamentals that are driving the surge in inflation, and what can the monetary and fiscal authorities be doing? What kind of policies should they be putting in place to cushion the effect?
Okay, so thank you very much. So when you look at the fundamentals of inflation, and when you look at the figures, when you look at the headline inflation rose by to 22.41% on a year-on-year basis, while the core inflation rose, it even tapered from 20.14% in April to 20.06%. However, when you look at the food inflation sustained its uptrend as it rose by 21 basis points from 24.61% in April to 24.82% in May. So when you look at those figures, you realize that the food inflation has been the major driver of inflation. And when you look at the major contributors to these inflationary figures, you'll see that the food and non-alcoholic beverages were the major drivers of inflation, sitting at 11.61% in terms of contribution, followed by the housing, water, electricity, gas, and other four, which is at 3.75%, and followed by the clothing and footwear, which set at 1.71%. So when you look at those figures, you realize that food inflation has been the major driver of headline inflation. And when you look at it, what are the major causes of this? When you look at the food inflation, you realize that one of the things that is driving food inflation is that we are in the planting season right now, and based on the information from the NIMET, we expect the planting season to range from around 200 to 250 days from February, and this is something that is going to we are going to be seeing it, that is going to form the trajectory of investment in the market, because during planting season, based on the fact that Nigeria has inadequate infrastructure to store food very well during the harvest season, we tend to have food scarcity during this period. and this also like drive the prices of food upwards. Excuse me. And another thing that you have to look at again is that the logistics of transporting food from a particular part of the country to another part of the country, that logistics, when you consider the price of fuel, the price of energy in terms of diesel and petrol, these factors also affect it, because when they want to transport that particular goods, if there's an increase in the price of petrol or diesel, it's going to affect those that are transporting this good from one part of the country to another. And this also like has a trickle-down effect that tends to like drive inflation upwards. So these are the major factors that tend to like push food inflation upwards. And when you see stuff like that, we can see that the price of energy is still all high, and also the food scarcity. So these are the major concerns that we really need to look at when it comes to like this inflation. So, and it's also one of the reasons why whenever the hike interest rates, it doesn't really like affect inflation like that. It doesn't really have a particular direct impact on inflation. So these are the major causes why we have been seeing inflation. And I also want to add something, that in as much as we are seeing inflation rise to like 22.41% in May, we should understand the fact that we are not seeing the impact of the fuel subsidy removal yet. This is because President Bola Ahmed Tinubu made mention of the removal of fuel subsidy around May 29th. So, and we started seeing scarcity of fuel and the change in price of fuel to like 488 naira per liter. We started seeing that around May 30 and May 31st. So we are not seeing the impact of that yet. So by the time we see the impact, it's going to be for the June inflation figures, and trust me, it is going to be significantly high. We are going to see the transport, we are going to see food, and we are also going to see energy drive inflation upwards significantly. So these are the things that we need to like look at.
Okay, so thank you, Samson, for that in-depth analysis. Now, you just touch on my next question, and I'm still going to ask this question so that you just give an holistic view concerning it. Samson, you made mention about fuel subsidy not having any impact on inflation yet, and that is what we should be expecting in the June inflation report by next month, God willing. But then again, let me ask you this question. With high unemployment rate at 33%, surge in inflation that is acting stubbornly, defiling all monetary policies, what will become of the livelihood of the common masses, the ordinary man and woman out there? Won't this bring about some kind of social vices in the country?
Well, it's something that we need to be like concerned, and we need to be worried about. Well, one thing that inflation is going to do right now for us is that we are going to be seeing the cost of food and the cost of a lot of like items rise significantly. However, when we look at it in terms of that, it's not just going to affect the normal layman, it's going to affect the rich, it's going to affect the poor also. And we already have these issues that let's say that have been here for over the time. So for concerning the economy and social vices, well, something that this is just going to like add to it, and is going to like make things to be more hard for Nigerians. And we might see social vices in terms of like bad behaviors, in terms of robbery and the likes. It might be something that we find is going to like be a major factor. However, another thing that we need to be looking at right now is that what are the major policies that the government is like putting in place just to like mitigate this effect. There are some policies that are needed, that are necessary to be done, and which is part of the policies that the new administration have like been implementing. However, when some policies that is going to like cause a particular economic hardship on the citizen is being implemented, we have to like understand that we need to have another policy that is going to like cushion the effects of that particular policy, that is just going to balance things up and going to make life to be more let's say more comfortable for the individual. So these are the things that I think that we should be looking at. However, in terms of like scarcity of food, and in terms of like hard high cost of living, is something that is going to like affect everybody, not just the layman, even the rich and the poor.
Okay, so let's quickly talk about food before we look at some other fundamentals concerning our topic of conversation this morning. Food inflation has increased to 24.82%. This is really, really, really high. But then again, I am really concerned about our state of food preservation and our capacity to continue local production, do you think we have what it takes to continue with food preservation to avoid any form of food insecurity and food crisis? And then again, what are the companies that are into food manufacturing business in the country doing to salvage that? And your thought on this?
Okay, so thank you very much for that. Now, concerning the aspects of food and food preservation, well, food preservation is just one of the things that we need to look at. You were saying something about unemployment rate that's around 38.33%. I just want to touch on that before I focus on this food. Well, that is for the NBS, and it has been a very long figure. According to KPMG, they revised the figure on their own forecast. They said our unemployment rate is around 41%. Yeah. So we still have unemployment rate significantly higher than that. But I'm still going to come back to that. Now, when you're talking about the food and the preservation of food, well, it's something that the government needs to like work into, because in Nigeria we have this farming system that is so archaic and is still old school. We have a lot of farmers that are still using cutlass and hoe, and which is not really like sustainable. And we have a lot of farmers that are still not having access to adequate capital and funding. So all these things are things that the government needs to like work into and work towards. And also most of our major government institutions that are into farming, we need to like look into that particular phase and inject more money into that particular space, because we have removed subsidy right now. I think the revenue from that particular subsidy removal and some of those revenue should be targeted towards these particular areas, so that we will have enough adequate capital. And also for farmers, incentives that is going to like provide them with the basic and necessary tools to like start their business is something that is highly needed. And this is not something that is going to like happen in the short term, because it needs to happen in the long term. I think also there's a part that we need to like reduce the importation ban on some food items, so that there's going to be more supply for the Nigerian, because Nigeria has a lot of population, and the food capacity that we currently have at this particular moment cannot really like cater for the demand. The supply capacity can't cater for the demand. So we need more investments in this particular space, both government and both private. And in terms of private, they need more access to fund and they need more incentive. And if these things are in place, it's something that is going to happen not in the short term. However, in the long term, we'll see changes, and we'll see gradual improvement in that particular space.
Okay, let's quickly look at the Central Bank of Nigeria now and its efforts aimed at taming inflation. The suspended CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, had this hawkish stand towards increasing interest rates to tame rising inflation. But we've seen that under his tenure, that has really brought little or no impact on inflation. Now we have a new acting governor, and if MPC meeting is set to hold next month, what are your expectations from this new CBN governor, and that's in acting capacity, and also the NPC? What effort do you think they should be putting in place to cushion to tame inflation? Because as it stands now, inflation is not just only a Nigerian problem, it's a global problem. The Federal Reserve has decided to retain its monetary policy rate, and then we're seeing other development in world economy. What are your expectations for our own NPC committee?
Okay, so thank you for that. Concerning that, you have to understand that the dynamics of events in the US is different from the dynamic of economy in Nigeria. We have different structures of economy, we have different fundamentals, and we have different issues that are affecting us. In as much as we have global issues around us, we still have some domestic and structural issues that are different. So if hiking interest rates in the US is working for them, it might not work for Nigeria. The US are hiking interest rates. However, we can see countries like China and Japan. China reduced their interest rates by 10 basis points, and this particular country also, Japan, they retained their rate at a negative of 0.1%, despite every other person hiking interest rates. So this is because they understand the fact that they have different fundamentals. In the case of Nigeria, the major causes of inflation is just that we have a supply side. We don't have like enough of supply to meet demand. Not really for the fact that we have a lot of like cash running around like that. That is chasing fewer goals. So that is one thing that we need to understand. That is why the hiking of interest rate in Nigeria has been limited over time. We have been seeing the effects being limited and so minor. So looking at what we are expecting for the next monetary policy decision, I personally think that we might see the CBN, the Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN, we might see them trying to retain rates or even cut it, because during the inaugural speech of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he made mention of the fact that he is working towards some policies that are going to be friendly for the economy and for the market. And he mentioned the fact that the interest rate, the monetary policy rate rather, is significantly high, that it needs to go down. So looking at this particular statement and looking at the fact that they've sacked the former CBN governor, we might be seeing the committee trying to like hold rates or even cut it at the next meeting, because it seems this new administration have different ways of tackling the issues in the economy. So from my expectation, I see them maybe maintaining the rate at the present place that it is right now, or they might even cut the rate, because this government wants to like use other tools and other avenues to like to curb inflation.
Okay, as we wrap up now, let me ask you this question now, still with the central bank now. Beyond reduction, retention, and also an increase in MPR, what other measures do you think that the CBN should be doing to tame inflation?
Okay, well, concerning that, I think the major thing that the CBN needs to do right now is that they need to work hand in hand with the federal government. You know, we have this kind of a situation which most times the fiscal policy tends to like hinder the monetary policy in terms of the approach towards the economy. There are sometimes that the policy in the a particular fiscal policy might go against a particular monetary policy. So at that particular point, I think the government needs to like have a balance, in as much as the fiscal policy is working on something, the monetary policy won't be countering what that fiscal policy is working on. So the CBN and the federal government, they need to work hand in hand and look at the best ways to like limit inflation. Also, when you look at this, there are also several other measures that the government can use in terms of like limiting the circulation, the currency in circulation, and trying to find other ways of just like making sure that there's a particular reduction in inflation. And one of these might just, apart from hiking interest rates, might also be finding ways of making sure that the particular segment of the economy that are struggling to provide, for example, the agricultural sector, they might find a way to like just have incentives for that particular sector to be more productive. And if this particular sector is more productive, if you are seeing more supply from the agricultural sector, then it's going to like limit the effects of the scarcity of food, and then limit the effects that the increase in the price of food is having on inflation. So this particular measure is something that the CBN can also take to like to limit and mitigate the rise in inflation.
All right, Samson, before I let you go now, let me get your projection. It is said that inflation will still be on the rise, okay, but I don't know how long. But then again, do you see inflation coming down anytime soon this year? And if yes, at what point, at what particular rate or figure specifically?
I do not see inflation come down at this particular point. Inflation is not going to like subside, because we have removed subsidy. We have a unification of currency right now. So these are factors that are going to affect inflation. Although the unification of the FX exchange is something that might have a limited effect based on the fact that the markets have been exposed to the parallel market already. So that has been priced in already. However, it's still going to have a small effect on it. But the removal of subsidy is something that is going to like drive inflation up significantly. So I do not see inflation tapering anytime soon. In fact, for my own projection, I'm seeing inflation still rising close to like 26% by the end of the year. That's December.
Okay, we just keep our fingers crossed, and we do hope that both the fiscal authority and the monetary authority work hand in hand to see how they can salvage the situation, because the truth is, like you rightly said, both the rich and the poor are also suffering from this, as it affects every strata of the economy. Samson Owolabi, investment analyst, I'd like to say a big thank you for taking out your time to be a part of this show this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.